Welcome everyone. My name is Pierre Canet. So I'm an MIA student, first year student, specializing in environment. And I work at the Alumni Office with Karine Deux, who is here with us, as well as Lucide. So this is the first roundtable of an Alumni Week, which is the very first edition aiming to connect the Institute's alumni with its current students. And we have here the first roundtable dedicated to students from ANSO as well as international history. It is a collaboration with the Career Services as well as the PDC. I'm going to start by introducing each panelist. So we have Dr. Susann Kassem, who did a PhD in ANSO, and who is currently a Leverhulme Early Career Fellow with the Middle East Center and the Faculty of Oriental Studies at St. Antony's College at Oxford. We have Dr. Felix Ohnmacht, who did a PhD here in international history and who's the head of commercial strategy and innovation at Novartis, the pharmaceutical company for the region sub-Saharan Africa. Then we have Gabriela, who's also here, who did a master here in ANSO and who's an external collaborator at the ILO, the International Labour Organization. And finally, she couldn't be here, but we had Aline Zuber, who's an archives associate in the Library and Public Archives Unit of the ICRC. The final person that I will introduce is our moderator, Diego Silva Garzón, who is a postdoctoral researcher at the Center for International Environmental Studies. So thank you all for being here. I will now leave the floor to Diego, who will start asking the questions. The way the event is structured is we have a first part that are already pre-written questions that will be asked by Diego, and then we'll move on to the Q&A part.
Okay, well, hello everyone, and thank you for joining us. It's really nice for me to be here and to see Susann and Gabriela and Felix, whom I had met at my time here during my PhD. So welcome. I want to start with a very general question, and it is, how do you make the most of your time while you were here at the Institute? So maybe we can start with Gabriela.
Yes, thank you so much, Diego, and good morning, everyone. It's really nice to be here, and I wanted to thank you again for the invitation. So yes, how I did the most out of my time at the Institute. Well, one of the things that I think was very important while I was there and that I really profited from was the attention actually that we get from professors. So having, the discussions, well, in ANSO we have very small classes and really not too many students. So I think majority of my classes were 10, 15 students. So it was very good to have this, the type of discussions we could have there were really profound. And it was also very interesting to have then the office hours with professors and have the chance of really having in-depth discussions about the papers that I was producing, going, developing the ideas I had and engaging critically with those. So this was, I think, one of the most important parts of the time I was at the Institute. And then, also, of course, one thing were the events, the seminars. I think there were, a lot of high-level panelists who were coming. This was also very important, sort of to build, to build my ideas and so on. And another thing that was important for me during that time was, doing I did 2 internships while I was at the Institute. And I think this was very, very relevant for then starting my career in international organizations. So I think these are 3 parts that I would like to highlight.
Thank you, Gabriela. And Susann?
Hi, yes, thank you. Thank you for having me. And thank you, Diego, for moderating. It's really nice speaking actually to the future generation of graduate institute students. I hope you're doing well. So I was in the institute for 5 years between 2012 and 2017. Together with Diego, we have the same cohort, which was the 2nd year of anthropology, of the anthropology degree, really. So it was all still happening, like administratively and financially and academically. I think it still was trying to figure out what it's really going to be, and I think it changed a lot since then. And I think I agree a lot with Gabriela about that we got a lot of attention from professors, but there was also the proximity to the international organizations and the people that we were really able to meet, like professors both visiting and ones that are at the institute. It was great discussing my project with them and getting a lot of feedback. And yeah, I'm still in touch with some of the professors from that time, and they really form my supportive mentor body, really, which is very important to have in academia. And also, of course, the friends that I was able to meet there, which were really invaluable at the institute, which really kind of were crucial also for the last year of the writing process. Yeah. And also, like, I think I got, last but not least, really, I got the FNS postdoc mobility, doc mobility grant, which was really also very good, because it allowed me to go to the Columbia University in New York and really expand my academic network and experience. So it was great to know.
Yeah, thank you, Susann. Yeah, I think that's an important opportunity that at the Institute we get, is the opportunity to apply for grants and get the support from our professors for these applications. And I also want to compliment that the international diversity at the Institute is really important. As you can see, was Susann from Lebanon and Gabriela from Brazil, myself from Colombia. So it's really something that you enjoy and learn from when you are at the Institute. But having said that, I want to go to the second general question, which is if you experience any particular challenges during the outset of your career, the first years after you left the Institute. And here I want to start with Susann.
Yeah, I think I'm still not muted, so that's good. Yeah, of course. I mean, academic career is not really the easy, I don't know, not an easy career. I don't know which one is, but especially it's really hard financially. And in my last year of my PhD, I really didn't have any funding because it was the fifth year. And yeah, it's just hard to find funding for that year. And then after I finished the PhD, I was also unemployed for like 9 to 10 months without an income. So that was really tough, and for that period of time until I basically got my first position at Oxford. And I've been really lucky since then because I got 2 very long-term postdocs, which is at Oxford, which is really good. So yeah, financial stability is not really, and independence is not really, it doesn't really exist when you do at the beginning of your academic career, which I think you have to be aware of.
Yeah, I want to go back to that, but we probably can discuss about it when we address the specific questions. But Gabriela, do you have?
Yes. So yeah, first I just wanted, this was something that you both brought in your speeches that I think was important and I didn't mention, was this international character of the Institute and all the people I met there. This was truly very, very important. And about the challenges, I think one of the main challenges is sort of the uncertainty right after you finish graduation. So it is, I think this is something I experienced and I saw from many of my friends as well, that well, you apply to tons of jobs and a lot of times you don't even get a reply saying that yeah, that well, they received your application but you were not shortlisted, or just a reply. So this is something that I found very, very challenging, sort of to, you know, you need to sort of keep going and keep applying and so on. But it is yeah, this is yeah, sort of a difficult moment for sure. And then one thing as well, I think it's very common, especially in the field of international organizations, to have short-term contracts and to work as yeah, sort of as a freelance for a while. So you work as a consultant or you have different positions. And I think this is something I was not entirely prepared to know how to navigate with. It can be, from simple things like knowing how to negotiate your daily rate or something. That's something we maybe you don't have an experience before. But also, one thing that I also saw from many friends who are international, who are non-European and continued in Europe, was also how that's difficult in terms of your visa status, or all these uncertainties. I think are something very difficult to navigate. Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Gabriela. Yeah, I wanna then get a little bit of a deeper perspective on those challenges that you had, but also on how the skills that the Institute helped you to develop were instrumental in helping you find a position and advance your career. So I want to ask Susann, how did the Institute's training help you to succeed so far in your career, and in which areas you would have appreciated more guidance and mentorship?
Yeah, of course. Well, the good part was because we didn't really have consequent funding really available. So we were actually made to apply for a lot of fellowship opportunities or funding opportunities, which was, I think, very good in the long run, because it helped a lot afterwards, because it's something you keep having to do in your career, really, to apply for funding. And yeah, and I really advise, I think what helped me a lot at the Institute was the SNS workshop that they organized for how to apply for funding. I think those are really, really helpful. And also, I'm not sure if you heard about the Excurso. I also still exists, the Excurso program, where you can travel and meet with international scholars to discuss your project. I think those are really good opportunities that are present there. And yeah, of course, yeah, maybe Gabriela wants to say something first, and then I can complete the next point.
Yeah, sure. Gabriela, do you want to give an input?
Yes, sure. So one thing that was certainly key for me as well, now talking about the financial part too, I received a scholarship during my time at the Institute. And this was really central, both to to allow me to do the master itself, because otherwise I wouldn't have been able to go to Geneva. But then also to have a bit more of security to find. A lot of times in these international organizations you have unpaid internships, which I think are of course a very unjust thing. It's but we can go deeper into that later. I don't think internships should be unpaid, but it having the scholarship provided me the security to be able to take this internship, which I think was a very important start in my career. And and then there were some points that I think were also helpful. For example, from career services, we could get this inputs on your CV, or there were these fairs on discussing different types of careers. And so I think these type of initiatives are also helpful when you're starting a career outside your country, because there are many things that are very different. So this kind of helps in that transition too.
Thank you, Gabriela. Before we go back to Susann, I want to welcome Felix, who is just connected. It's nice to see you again. And we would like to get your comments also on the type of challenges that you have had after finishing the PhD and trying to join the job market. What type of challenges did you face? What type of skills were helpful in this process, and what type of skills you would have appreciated to have more guidance on?
Fantastic. Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Right. Okay, fantastic. Well, I think by way of introduction as well, just briefly, so my name is Felix Ohnmacht. I was a PhD student, a master and a PhD student at the Graduate Institute, and graduated in 2016. And since then, it's been, to put it bluntly, a hell of a ride. Really enjoyed it. To answer your question, it's not easy to go into the corporate world when you have a PhD in history. It's not sort of the most, obvious degree to have. And so, the skills that I really needed to both acquire and to build on, which I gained at the Graduate Institute, are actually the skills that are most obvious. It's perseverance, having a vision, pursuing, the dream that you have, being relentless in terms of, how you go about executing on that passion. Just to give you an idea, and this will hopefully strike a note with many of you, I think I have still a folder on my old computer with probably about 60 job applications, 55 of which I got no reply. And, then we can chat about this later on. A door opened up, and then it's up to you to seize that opportunity and to really be an entrepreneur. I think today, in order to succeed, you have to be an entrepreneur to chart your own path. Also, I forgot to mention, so for those of you who don't know what I do, so I'm the head of commercial strategy and innovation at Novartis, responsible for sub-Saharan Africa, which for us is 46 countries and a market of 1.2 billion people. Happy to go into more detail, but I don't want to steal the show from all the excellent other panelists who've already dedicated their time towards all of you.
Thank you, Felix. I think Susann wanted to complement a little bit about the type of skills that you would have appreciated to have more guidance on during the PhD, knowing what you know now about the academic industry.
Yeah, thank you. I actually wanted to compliment maybe a bit more first about how it helped. And I think me and Gabriela had probably a similar experience, and we mentioned already a little bit of some of that really, because I think what was really good about the Graduate Institute is that it connected us to like top scholars and practitioners in international organizations, really, that allowed us to get to know and understand like leading roles in our field, because I think we could like look up to, which I think was really important for me. And of course, both professors and like non-academics from practitioners were also able to comment on our project, give us like a very diverse perspective. Yeah, so I was always very happy about that. Yeah, I think that's all I want to add for now. Maybe Gabriela.
Can I actually add one thing as well? Because I think you raise a good point, which is, and maybe my initial answer was a bit fluffy and flamboyant, but the truth is, one of the things that you learn at the Graduate Institute is diversity. And diversity is not something that comes natural. Diversity is something that is a skill, and being able to harness that, bringing a diversity of opinion to key discussions, is such a valuable asset. And I remember in my final year of the PhD, I got a scholarship to go to Princeton, which, by any metric is a very reputable university. And I remember being struck. I was bored by the conversations that were going on. The diversity of viewpoints, of experience that you get at the Graduate Institute are second to none. And I think when you learn how to cultivate that and to utilize it to, towards your own end, that's where the rubber hits the ground. And Susann, that kind of reminded me of what you're saying, right? You're kind of using those skill sets for your own benefit. So yeah, sorry to just jump in.
No problem. I'm curious though about the type of job that a historian and an anthropologist can do outside of academia. These disciplines are not necessarily obviously applied outside of research. So I would like to know a little bit more about that, like about Gabriela specifically. How do you see the job of an anthropologist in international organizations? And Felix, how did you make this decision to jump out of academia into the corporate world? Was it informed by your interest, but also by the challenges that you faced? Gabriela, maybe you can start.
Sure. I think that's a very good question. And I think the first well, of course, it is true. It's not that obvious, and I think unfortunately we do have two. We should have more anthropologists and historians in international organizations. My first internship, well, my internship at the ILO was at the research department, and there it was very clear that, well, I think 80% of the staff were economists, and then you had maybe 15% were lawyers, and there was one historian in the department, and really like no sociologists, no anthropologists, none. And I think it is essential to have also these voices there, and I think for many reasons. So on the one hand, I think we make different questions. I think we're looking at maybe same facts, but with a different lens. So we're very worried. We're looking at processes. We're looking at power relationships. We're looking and it is essential to look at all those things in the field of development, and I think also in humanitarian action. It's important to have, I think, this critical lens, and to try and go beyond the numbers. And sometimes we have these very aggregate numbers, and we really need to be able to dig in and maybe tell the stories that are behind those. I think this is one important thing. I also think there is a bit of it could be further developed, the capacities on qualitative analysis in general. I think we do have, I think that this is sort of gaining space in international organizations. Doing, I'm often asked to do key informant interviews and this type of things, and sometimes you're talking with colleagues, and this is something that really helps me. Well, the skills I gathered at the graduate, having gathered skills in interviewing, thinking of different types of interviews, how you do qualitative data gathering, and how to analyze the data as well. Of course, this is then done differently if you're inside an organization. Sometimes we don't have enough time to go in depth as maybe we would like into some of the topics we can discuss. But I think it's important to do this also because then we bring different voices to the policy papers that are being developed. And so this is, this I think is something that is very important, and I think we do need to have more ANSO and international history students in this position. So I was glad to have had that opportunity to be at the research department at the ILO, but I think we do need more people, and we do need these views there.
Tess, do you just want me to go ahead?
Sorry, I was muted.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so again, this might sound a bit fluffy, but there are no limits to the kinds of jobs you can get. And I wholeheartedly mean this. The key question is, where's your passion? And once you've identified that, where do you want to make a difference? Then it's a question of how do you position the skills that you've gained, the reputation of the Graduate Institute, the right network, if you have it, and if not, how do you get it? Going back to the point I made earlier around the kind of diversity of people, of views, of opinions, which is something, Gabriela, that you mentioned as well. The first step is always listen, learn to listen. Once you learn how to listen, you can then ask the right questions that Gabriela mentioned. And honestly, the value that you bring in asking the right questions is an untold treasure. And, the key next step, and I think here is probably the number one thing that I wish I would have gotten more out of at the Graduate Institute, is learning how to think in a structured way. It wasn't until I was in management consulting where you learn, other than how to make pretty PowerPoint presentations, you learn how to approach a problem in a structured way, how to position different kinds of evidence to support an argument that you're trying to advance or a quantitative point that you're trying to make. Because ultimately I've seen, fantastic analyses not bearing any fruit because people don't know how to structure the delivery. And I've seen really bad content, making it all the way through because people knew how to deliver. If you can combine those two skill sets, then any job is up for grabs. And don't be afraid to get your hands dirty. Start at the bottom and just work.
And maybe building on that, it would be interesting to hear how have you managed to communicate those skills as a historian, as an anthropologist, as an academic, in your job searching? How do you say, oh yeah, I'm an anthropologist, I know how to ask good questions, or I know how to do interviews, or I like to have an in-depth analysis of a particular institution? How you tell this to an employee that is not necessarily looking for that, or doesn't know that you have those skills?
Well, I mean, truth be told, as mentioned, I failed the first 60 times. And, I think what happens is, and this is true both for anthropologists and historians, we're all about stories and storylines. If you can articulate a good value proposition to a company that's hiring you, they'll be all ears. And it's up to you to then tie in to understand what is their business or their organization really trying to achieve, both in the medium term, today and tomorrow, but also what's their overall vision. And then begin to position yourself according to their needs, because no one is hiring you because you have a PhD, or no one is hiring you because you've got a 5.8 average. People are hiring you because they think you can add value. And if you can articulate that, you have a very good shot. The other piece of advice, if I am in a position to give advice, is be blunt and bold. Ultimately what worked for me from getting into management consulting was Googling who are the managing partners at these firms and writing them direct emails and using their language, saying, "Hi, I'm Felix. I want to work for you because of this, and this." And I got great response from that. Once you've got the interview, it's on you to just make the best of it.
Thank you. That's really good advice. And I don't know, because it's also not obvious in academia. We think it is. We think that because we are doing PhDs, we know what a researcher wants when they are looking for a postdoc, or what a university wants, or how the position granting functions when they are looking for a professor. So maybe Susann can give us some light in this, like what skills have you found to be important for employers? What do they look for in postdocs, and also what are the politics behind this in academia? A bit of a loaded question, but
no, it's totally fine. The politics behind it, I don't know, I'll have to reflect on that a bit more, but I think what helped me a lot, actually, I think it really is similar to Felix's experience about the structure. Like before I got my first position at Oxford, I remember presenting to just a couple of peers. My husband's also academic, actually, and some friends, to what I really wanted to present in that interview, and they're like, "No, you cannot present this." And then, and I was working on that for weeks. I worked on that for 2 or 3 weeks for the interview. I remember it was 10 days. It was a long time. And then overnight, the interview was the next day. Overnight, I changed it completely. I shortened it. I said very explicitly, "These are my goals. This is what I'm going to do when you take me." And I think that worked much better. So, yeah. But the politics behind it, is there something, I don't know if there's something specific you're referring to, but.
Well, no, I was thinking more about the fact that sometimes when a position is open, hiring committees, they know exactly what they are looking for. So if they don't choose you, it doesn't mean that you are not a good scholar, but they just have something different in mind. And it can go from demographics to the topic of research that you're using, or from the proximity of your networks. So that is something to keep in mind, when not to get frustrated when you're looking for jobs in academia and you can't find any. Yeah, but I'm still learning.
Sorry.
No, go ahead, please.
I think the market is really saturated. It's really hard. There's really very few positions that are opening up, and there's a lot of people with like PhDs that are on the market. It's very hard to like. So it's really not personal. I mean, I know people that have applied for hundreds of positions until they made it to still get into really top positions. You know, it's very like difficult. Yeah.
Yeah, and Gabriela, I wanted to ask you, Felix talked about value. What is your value proposition? And I imagine that is very different depending on the sector you want to work on. So I was wondering, how did you manage to communicate your skills to international organizations?
Yeah, so first I think I think the skills we require as in anthropology, sociology, they are being international organizations are actually looking for those nowadays. I don't know. I think there's a lot of search for doing policy papers, policy briefs, but that do rely also on more in-depth analysis. They want to have a balance between going deep, but not doing exactly research, not going that deep into it, but having meaningful, knowing how to use meaningful information that can then be applied for policy. And I think this is one important skill. And I'm honestly not sure how exactly I communicated that, but I think now, reflecting back on my path this far, what I think was really important, of course, I think now that we're coming out of a pandemic, maybe that's something that is more tangible again. But for me, what was very important at the beginning was to really participate in all the events that I was genuinely interested in. And, during the internships I did, actually talk to all the people I was, that were doing work that I was interested in. So as Felix was mentioning, just, like sending an email, what I did a lot of times was just to approach someone at these organizations and say, hi, if you have like 5 minutes, could we grab a coffee together? And I would really like to learn a bit more about how you got, about your own path and how you got to where you are. So I think this sort of networking is important, and not at all I think it kind of happens organically too. Sometimes when you are, in person in one of these places, if you go to, for example, of course, I started working with Indigenous people's rights because I was extremely interested in that. And I was, because of that, participating in many events in Geneva, which were discussing Indigenous people's rights. And there I just, organically sort of met a lot of people who are also interested in these issues. And that helped me a lot then in my career path and to find the positions that later I was able to take up on.
Thank you, Gabriela.
And Diego, not that you asked me a question, but just to jump in as well on Susann's point, from an academic industry point of view, and I mean, it is an industry by all means, that this point around the value proposition is universally true. If you go and apply at a particular university within a particular department, you got to do your research, as no doubt my colleagues have done, because they've been successful. What is it? What chairs does the department already have? Which directions are they researching in? What have they not done? What kind of publications are out there in terms of the gaps that they're likely trying to plug? And once you get there to the interview, talk to the department assistant, find out any intel that you can get, and then position yourself. That is literally how, in my view, you have the best chance at winning. It's not a guarantee, but it's certainly an advantage. And I know this I still have lots of friends in academia, even though I'm being accused of selling out. They tell me the same story.
Yeah, no, I think that's definitely key. When you're applying for a position, they always give you an email for extra questions you can ask. And I think it's a little bit expected that you actually ask questions. It shows that you are interested and that you want to know what their interests are. But having said that, I was wondering, our career services, they've done the best they can to guide students into positioning themselves into the job market. But just as I've asked you for advice for historians and anthropologists, what type of events, workshops, talks would you advise the career services to encourage so that students have the skills they need to jump into the job market, be it at the corporate world, probably having a more structured mind that might be very general, like economists or political scientists might be very well trained to think like that, but anthropologists and historians might not. But other type of workshops too, like grant applications, I don't know. So I don't know if Susann has any comments on that.
Actually, I do. It's funny that you're asking this question because I was just thinking about why did they not offer any like writing workshops? Because this is what I'm doing right now. I'm doing a writing workshop. I mean, you think as an academic you can like write, which we can actually, but I think it's a bit more than that. You have to have like this. I think it goes a bit to what Felix is also saying about structure. It's like to publish academically is it's a very structured, I think, process. That it's not, you have to kind of be on the ball, like you have to you really have to keep writing and submit and know what journals your work needs to be submitted to. And I think, I mean, I'm doing this workshop now at Oxford, and I think it really is helping me a lot. And I'm, you would think that as a finished PhD, that's something you would know. I mean, I know how to write. It's just a more structured way of writing, of getting things done, of being constantly like, I think to be always like, not to drop it, to be always able to write and like in your everyday, even though there's a lot of other things that you have to do, like teaching or I don't know, other obligations you really have. I think that is really important and would be good also to as a student, I think, to have.
Thank you, Susann. Gabriela?
Yeah, I agree with Susann that having this writing workshops would be very important. Also, now pushing a bit more to the world of international organizations, what I see is that, well, when I started, but we have all these different types of pieces that you need to write. So a technical paper or a policy paper or a research note or a lot of different things that I was not necessarily aware of what were these different things, and I really learned in the job. And these are maybe knowing these differences of how do you write differently a policy paper or a more research paper? I think these are very, very helpful. And one thing that I noticed I had when during the internships and that I did not have at the institute was, and I think this is helpful for people who want to work in international organizations, is on the one hand to understand what are the avenues to enter these organizations, because of course you have internships or you have the volunteering possibilities with the UN, or you have the consultancies. I think it's interesting to kind of learn a bit more about those. And one thing that I also had a workshop at the ILO once that was about really going through the whole application process with us, and learning how to better write a motivation letter, or learning how to make your CV in a way that your skills are popping out. So I think this type of trainings they're very basic, but it's also important even to just have this moment where you're engaging with these instruments you need to make in a more critical and in-depth way, and that you get feedback from others. I think this is very important. I think I had another point, but I cannot remember it right now. So just best of all, if that comes back to mind, I'll jump in. Thanks.
Yeah, perfect. We can do that. And Felix, do you have something to add?
Sure, 3 points. The first one is just a book reference. Nancy Duarte wrote a book called Resonate. It's all about how do you tell stories that resonate with an audience. And it's a fantastic book. It's available free as a PDF online if you know your way around Google. Second point, this is something that I actually, they offered it in Princeton, and I thought it was fantastic. We're all used in terms of these writing workshops to sit down and walk someone through, and you're in your comfort zone. What they offered was a walk through the park with either a professor or someone from whoever is qualified, and you have 25 minutes to pitch what your dissertation is all about. And honestly, I got no better feedback than that walk, because I had to, on my feet, think about what is it that I'm actually arguing? What are the points that I'm making? What are the sections that tell that story? Once you do that, once you have that clarity, writing is easy. And the third point is, there are certificates out there Coursera, edX, and so on, where you can take leadership training, these kind of things, and just go out and get one of those certificates. I don't know if the Graduate Institute even has these partnerships where you can get discounts or something like that, and if not, lobby Karin for doing that.
Thank you, Felix. I think that's great advice. Also, coming from the consultancy world, I think, I'm talking about you, structure thinking and storytelling are becoming more and more important and part of the interviewing process. And something I would add is that it would be interesting for students to have mock interviews, or at least a landscape of the type of interviews that you face in the job market in different industries. When you come out of the PhD or the master's, sometimes you don't even know what type of markets to target. So it would be interesting to know where you can apply and what type of interviews you're going to face in those applications. Gabriela, go ahead.
Yes, I just wanted to add something on that about the interviews. It's true. For example, the UN, they have a very structured format for interviews. They're competency-based, and there are all sorts of manuals online also on how to go about those, how they will happen. So this is really something that it could be an easy workshop actually to do, to kind of understand how to prepare for those interviews and even have mock interviews, as you said. I think this is a great idea.
Thank you, Gabriela. We have some questions in our chat. We have one that I can see.
I can even ask him to ask the question. I'm just gonna. Yeah. Robert, could you just? I'm just gonna make him a panelist, and if he'd like to ask his question, so people can see him, feel free to turn on your camera and ask your question directly. Otherwise, we will read it.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes,
perfectly.
Hi, yeah, thanks so much for hosting this. I had a question, particularly for people that have pursued academic careers, so Susann and Diego, also yourself, it sounds like. But I appreciate the conversations about, how many applications it requires to get the job and the competition and the mobility that has seemed to be useful. But I'm just wondering, on a pragmatic level, what was really the process of going about that? And also kind of on a political level, building networks and things like this. Now I'm coming into the PhD in the fall in ANSO. It seems that doc mobility is no longer a thing, really. It seems like there's some other options, but it's kind of like within DocCH, or you have to apply for conference funding, stuff like that. So I'm wondering, what you recommend to really navigate the academic terrain from Geneva, so both an institute and thinking beyond question, to make yourself relevant to junior scholars, to other PhD students around the world, in job markets that you're kind of interested in. Again, I understand, find the gap, see where you're relevant, but what are the cultural academic norms and the politics of kind of navigating that would be really, I think, helpful to know more. And thank you for hosting this.
Susann, did you want to say something?
I don't know, very practically, a very practical skill. I'm not sure if you heard about the Professor is in, but it's a very good website. It was academic that basically wrote tons of applications and really does tell you practically how to really go about writing applications. I think that was really helpful to me, how to structure your opening paragraph and the letter of your letter of application. That's a very practical part. One thing I really didn't do, and I think I was always very, very shy, especially comparing myself to my partner, who I thought was very good about putting himself out there, connecting to different scholars in the field, like-minded people. Because I realized at the end of my PhD, I had no network really. Maybe not a small network, but he had a much larger one. Now, I'm not sure if this helps at all, because I ended up securing better postdocs than him. So it's not really, there's no real guarantee for anything. You really just have to keep trying, and not really, if you really believe in your project, to keep working on it. It might take time to get it. It's really just very hard to secure academic positions, I think. So.
And I would add that, well, probably the most crucial skill right now, given the fact of how academia is developing, is to learn how to write grant applications. And usually we wait until we have a question, a research question that can take years to develop a grant application. And I think I would suggest students in their first year to start applying for the Wenner grant in anthropology. You said you're from ANSO, so it seems relevant. And even if you don't get the grant, which is really difficult to get that particular one, they ask very precise questions that help you frame your project and think about your project in ways that probably your supervisor won't, or the PhD seminar won't. So it will just make you face the hard questions that we like to avoid in the first years. And once you have a grant application, then you can also explain your project in a much easier way. So to me, that really helped me put myself out there and send emails like Felix was saying with CEOs. You can also do it with professors who are in the other side of the world, and probably many of them won't answer. But the academic culture in the US, in the UK, is very different than in France and in Switzerland. So in some of those countries, professors are encouraged to answer these emails. And so I would also advise to do that, knowing what your project is about, or at least having a clear idea. And that will help you strengthen your network, which is going to be very helpful in applying for grants, in being a bit like finding places to do a visiting fellowship, but also finding people who are going to write your recommendation letters when you are applying for a postdoc. So I think it's important to be proactive in that. Yeah. Do we have any other questions from the audience? Yeah.
It doesn't seem like it. Please feel free to write them in the chat if you have any question right now.
If there is nothing, I do have a question which is sensitive for some people, but I think it's very important, especially if you are doing a master's where you are overloaded with readings and where you have no time, or you are doing a PhD and working on the same project for many years. And it's about your mental stability. How did you manage to keep yourself mentally healthy during the PhD, or how do you fail to do so, and how did you recover from that? Yeah, maybe Felix wants to say something.
Hi, yeah, happy to share. Well, there are two axes around which I can answer that question. The first is actually during the PhD, I, for some reason, like to burn the midnight oil. So I work at night. And, you know, while I was in the US, so my wife stayed in Geneva. She was working. And while I was in the US, it felt like I was in the same time zone as she was when I was in Berlin at the Max Planck. It felt like I was in the US because I literally had my most productive hours at, starting at 8 in the evening and going probably until 4:30 in the morning. And I did that for a year, which isn't super, it's not a good thing to do. But what keeps you healthy is relying on your support network, know who your friends are, know other PhD students are in the same situation, and we're all living through the same experience. Sometimes it feels like you can't say anything because you feel like, oh, I might be vulnerable or weak or whatever. That's not the case. It takes courage to speak up. So just tell them, hey, I'm going through a shit time. This is difficult. How are you managing that? When you talk, things tend to get better. The second axis is actually post PhD, when I mentioned I wrote like 60 applications, and that was not a fun time at all. I can tell you, I was I don't know what it's like to be depressed, but at the end of that time, I was probably as close as I hope to ever get. And it was at the same time, my wife was working at the World Economic Forum, flying all over the world, business class, and I was kind of sitting at home playing Xbox and writing applications. And the same recipe is actually true. Talk to the people who are in the same situation, talk to people who have managed to overcome it, and don't be afraid to seek also professional help. If you feel like you need to go see a psychologist, I mean, look, you injure your arm, you go see a doctor. Why wouldn't you do the same for your mental health?
Thank you, Felix. Susann or Gabriela want to say something about it?
I'm happy to say something, I guess. I think, yeah, Felix has a very good point there. I think during the PhD, the toughest year was really this last push where you have really a final deadline. And I think it also didn't really help to think that if you don't finish it in 5 years, your PhD, you won't get a PhD. That's it. I think for me, I just really needed like a couple more months at the end. And I really realized that I just needed those 2 months. And I just, didn't have them. And that was really hard. So really, I think, and thinking about it later on, I'm sure it could have been easily solved if you like talk to your advisor about it. It's not like your advisor is really foreign to having deadlines and being able to meet them or not. And I think it's totally fine. Yeah, and of course, like Felix said, having friends and for me, family was really important. Like my family is in Germany, so it was very easy when I didn't feel really good during the PhD, I just picked up my stuff and I went to visit, just change the atmosphere, go to people that mean something to you, and I think that really helped me a lot. Stay sane.
Thank you, Susann. Gabriela?
Yes, so of course, not talking about the PhD because, but to the master, my experience was moving from Brazil to Geneva was already a big change. I had a job in Brazil, then I left that to become a student again. There was all these layers of differences, and then being away from my husband, my family as well. And I think what you all said about really talking to, in fact, there are a lot of other people who are passing through exactly the same situation where. In the master's, so it's good to talk to your friends and kind of build those networks. It's very important to rely on your network. Also, I agree that if you're at a point where why not seek help if you're feeling that that is needed. Sometimes we are at points where it's hard to find solutions by ourselves. So sometimes we do need help from professionals, and that's very important. Yeah, for me personally, like I had to deal with anxiety issues at some point, so this was very, very important to get help at that point. And what also I think helped me a lot was to sometimes, sometimes you're so into the inside the institute and thinking about our masters and the classes and all that. It's really important also to have other activities on the side. So it can be doing a sport. It can be, this sounds so simple, but for me that really meant a lot to have another place where I could just let out some steam. And also in the life in Geneva, just trying to get to know some people or places outside the bubble of international Geneva. I think that for me was very important because this is a competitive atmosphere. We feel a lot of competition, and it was always very good to have people who are doing other things and live other realities and kind of to navigate that helps put everything into perspective, I think.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you so much for your time, for your input. It was really interesting to hear